It is application season. It seems like hunting season just got over. And for some of you, hunting season is still going on. But for us, we got to start planning anywhere from 5, 6, 8, 10 months in advance to start applying for tags. Everything that you need to know about every western state for pretty much all the species, we're going to cover between now and probably the 1st of June 2022. And the folks that go hunt want to make sure you know all this stuff. And as always, if you go out there and sign up for their insider and their whole map sweep, use promo code Randy and they'll give you $50 in their gear shop. Some might call this a sales pitch, but really what it is, it's why I think Alaska is a really good deal for non-residents. I'm lucky, I get to go up there a lot. My grandparents lived in Haines, Alaska until they passed away. I have 3 uncles and their families that live there, so I go up there fishing a lot. I've spent a lot of time up there. And the more time I spend, the more I realize how doable Alaska is for a non-resident from the lower 48. Is there anybody watching this who doesn't dream about Alaska every once in a while?
Look at this, it's incredible.
Or a lot of the time, if you're like me. And I can vouch for this, that once you've hunted Alaska, you're gonna dream about it a whole lot more than you did before you hunted it. And if there's something that I would call wild in the lower 48, and there's some wild country here, Alaska takes it to this completely higher level of wild and sometimes crazy. I want to talk about the Alaska draw, but I also want to talk about the fact that a lot of Alaska, you can hunt species that are a ton of fun and have great hunts without even having to go through this whole draw system that we're going to talk about. Because there's a lot of really good, I'm going to use the term general. In Alaska, they have tier this, tier that, registration hunt, all this stuff. Go read their regulations and you'll understand. But when I'm referring to a general over-the-counter hunt, it's one that you don't need to draw a tag in a limited entry draw. So you want to get more return from that investment you make in that $160 non-refundable, non-resident Alaska hunting license. I got some ideas for you. Sitka Blacktails, they're not on a draw. If you look at most of the state, we're talking Kodiak, the southeast areas, that's a pretty easy hunt to do relative to what a lot of people think it is. Yeah, there's some logistics to it, but you know what? It's Alaska. It's not like Alaska has all these, what would I call them, great big cities in every location. So you got to plan a little bit, but we've done this Sitka blacktail hunt multiple times. You can do it in August, way up in the high alpine before they start dropping down. Or you can do it in November when they're in the rut. And when you see them in the rut, Sitka blacktails with the color of their antlers and this beautiful cape and this blocky, stout, swollen up body, it's really cool. I've never done the November stuff, but I will tell you that November Sitka blacktails is really high on my list. And you don't need to draw a tag. You buy your hunting license, you buy your deer tag, and off you go. And then there's a lot of black bear in Alaska, and the only parts of it that are on a draw are the southeast islands in parts of units 1, 2, and 3. Most of the rest of the state, wide open for black bear. Don't need a draw, don't need a guide, and Alaska is really generous in the length of their seasons. I think in probably most units, season only closes for July and August maybe. It's crazy how much opportunity there is there for black bear. And then we got caribou. I think they have 4 or 5 draw hunts that non-residents can be a part of for caribou, but they have a ton of caribou that is just general, over-the-counter, go do it. And it can be as complicated as you want it to be. You know, you go hire a transporter, you fly out somewhere, you do all this. Or A very popular hunt with residents and non-residents alike is what they call the haul road, where it's archery only for 5 miles on each side of the haul road. Once you get past 5 miles, you can use a rifle. It's so popular though, expect you're gonna have some company, maybe a lot of company. We saw a video where Marcus and Kara, they went up and did that and they didn't have to draw that tag. It was just, let's go. And then we get into moose. You're gonna see a ton of the moose hunts are on a limited entry draw, but there's a lot of areas that are not on a limited entry draw that both residents and non-residents alike can just go. Buy your hunting license, buy your moose tag, figure out the logistics, and off you go. And contrary to what a lot of people think, you don't need a guide to go moose hunting in Alaska. But as a non-resident, you usually are restricted to a bull that is 50 inches or wider or has at least 4 brow tines on one side. So you can go do that. There's a ton of hunting in Alaska that is open to anyone who goes and gets a general tag. The idea of that was to give you some ideas of why Alaska, in my mind, represents a really good value to the non-resident. Okay, we buy that $160 license and then look at all the things we can go hunt without even having to draw a limited entry tag. So let's talk about these limited entry options, and we'll go over the step-by-step and understand that this isn't what I would call a place where you're going to build a lot of points and get a huge quote-unquote return on your application investment, because Alaska doesn't have a point system. And I know a lot of people are frustrated by that. I like that fact. I know, yeah, every year I buy this license and I apply and I pay these application fees. I'm not building any points. But you know what? In my mind, a lot of these point schemes are just that, almost like Ponzi schemes. So I'm glad Alaska doesn't have it. So the first thing you want to do is go out to the Alaska website and establish an account. You can log in as a guest, but if you're going to be doing this, you may as well establish your own account and have all your information in there every time you go. Then the next thing you want to do is Alaska has what's called a draw supplement. So you want to go out there and download the 2022 draw supplement. And it has all the hunt codes, all the information you need to know about doing this application. Have that in front of you, because there are things in that draw supplement like descriptions or restrictions, or, you know, okay, you can't use aircraft to access this moose unit or whatever it might be. You want to know that stuff before you apply. Not much has changed from last year. And you're going to see when you download that draw supplement that the deadline is December 15th, 5 p.m. Alaska Standard Time. And just a note, you know, I mentioned earlier a lot of hunts where you don't need a guide. But if you're going to hunt Dall sheep, mountain goats, or the big bears, i.e. brown bear, grizzly bear, you are required to have a guide as a non-resident, or second degree kindred must be your guide. And second degree kindred is well defined in the regulations. I told you I had family who lives up there, uncles and cousins, they don't qualify. So before you get yourself all hopped up that I'm going to Alaska and I'm gonna hunt with my cousin or I'm gonna hunt with my uncle, no, figure that out beforehand. Because of that guide requirement, we're not gonna cover the goats, the Dall sheep, or the big bears, because our stuff is go do it on your own. So here's the basics before that December 15th deadline. Go buy your $160 non-refundable, non-resident hunting license. I think it's $100 extra if you want to add a fishing license to that. Well, if you go to Alaska, there's some really, really good fishing, right? I'd say more people go to Alaska for the fishing than the hunting. So if you want to, you can add that. Like I said, there's no point system. So don't worry about, oh, how do I buy points or how do I accumulate points? You're not going to do that in Alaska. You can do a party application. Up to 2 hunters can be on one application. But a lot of states, you know, they let you do 4, 5, or 6. In Alaska, you can do 2. So when you get looking at the draw supplement, you're going to see all of these hunts for all these different species. And I want to list the species that you can apply for without having to hire a guide. We're talking black bear, caribou, bison, moose, Roosevelt elk in Alaska on some of the islands. And lastly, you can do musk ox in Alaska without a guide. So that's an awful lot of species that you can apply for. Now, when you do your application, they're going to say, what's your first choice? And you're going to go through that and you're going to put your first choice in there, and they're going to charge you $5 to $10 depending on which species it is that you're making the application for. And then it's going to say, do you want a second choice all the way down to 6? It lets you buy 6 choices. And you can make all 6 of those choices your first the same hunt code. So what I do, if there's a place I really want to go hunting, I make it choices 1 through 6. And yeah, I pay 6 times as much as if I only do one application, but my name goes in the hat and I get assigned 6 random numbers that hopefully one of them is lower than if I only paid for one choice or one application. So when you go there, it looks kind of funky when you're doing your application. It's like, oh, hunt code A, all 6 choices. But it's a way to I don't know anymore if it improves your odds because everybody's doing it. But if you don't do it, it decreases your odds. Let's put it that way. Given that it's only $5 to $10 for each application choice, you know, if you're serious about Alaska, do all 6 of them as whatever choice you want. And don't hesitate to do them all as what I'd call first choice. I mean, even though it says first choice, second choice, make them all the same hunt code. I think you're going to see that the tag prices and the license cost in Alaska is pretty darn reasonable compared to some of these other western states. I like Alaska. I think it's a great value. So when you go to the draw supplement in the back, it'll just say, here's how many tags there were, here's how many applicants there were, and it'll round it to whatever percentage. If you want that in a more visual and useful format that you can kind of manipulate the data, Go Hunt has all of that out on their website. They've updated their 2022 draw odds. If you have an insider account, you can look at that, and it's way more visual, and you can manipulate and look at a lot of that data in ways that is a little more cumbersome in the supplement. Go Hunt also has a strategy article out there about Alaska that's going to touch on some of the things I might skip over in this video. And know that the draw results, this is one of the good things about Alaska. You're going to have your draw results by mid to late February. So as you're trying to put together your calendar and your strategy for the year, it's really good when a state like Alaska, like I said, is on the ball. And they get us in their system and they get it turned around before a lot of the other states even have their deadline. That's kind of it in a nutshell. I hope that I've convinced you that Alaska is probably more attainable than you think. I hope I've convinced you that it's a pretty darn good investment if you want to go up there and do other things beyond just these limited entry draw hunts. And I can assure you, if you've dreamed of Alaska, when you go up there and do one of these hunts, it's probably more compelling than what you dreamed of. And I'm just saying that from my own personal experience. So anyhow, good luck. Go out to the Alaska website, establish an account, download the supplement, get your license, and don't forget the deadline is December 15th, 2021, even though these are hunts for 2022. And it's 5 o'clock Alaska Standard Time. Good luck.